Hello. So I did my paper over the World Cup and how it is coming. It's coming up pretty soon, like about a month. So I decided to do a paper over it, and yeah, let's get started. So let's get started with what is the World Cup. The World Cup is a soccer quadrennial tournament of 32 national teams that is organized by the FIFA, stands for Federation International of the Football Association. It determines a men's world's champion out of all these teams coming from different countries um, to play for the World Cup. This year will be held in Qatar, which is kind of like in the middle eastern. And there's going to be 32 national teams, and have all been broken down to 8 groups, with the top 2 progressing to the knockout stage and so on, like after all those stages. So let's get started. There are hundreds of qualifying games in 3 years leading up to a month of the World Cup, because that's how long it's held for, a month and probably a couple days. The hosts plus the other 31 teams that qualified are all put in 8 different groups, A through H. There are 4 teams per group, and each win equals 3 points. And if a game ends with a draw, it equals 1 point. So let's say it'd be USA versus Mexico, and USA wins, it'd be 3 points for them. If they tied, it'd be 1 point for each team. And then depending on which round they're in, they'll either decide to do a penalty shootout or just verse the other team, and then do the penalty shootout after that, after all those points, because they'll differ. The first stage is our round of 16, and then the next is the quarterfinal, and after that we have the semifinals, and then after that is the final. The best 2 teams with the most points move on from the round of 16 to the quarterfinal, and in the quarterfinal, a group will face off with another group's best team. The same concept will be the same for the semifinal, which leads up with the 2 teams for the final. The points are for the teams that move on to the next round. If there are some draws, then there will be penalties after the games. That way there is a winner. And for example, in 2018, 4 years ago, the last World Cup was held in Russia. Russia versus Spain was one of the quarter games, quarter round. And they ended up in a draw, so they went to penalties, and Russia knocked out Spain 4-3 because they scored 4 and Spain scored 3. So Spain was out of the World Cup, and in the quarterfinals, after the round of 16, Croatia versus Russia, after the shootout, because they also draw, Croatia knocked out Russia, so they get to move on to the semifinal. But Croatia was in a different group, so that's where that 2 groups with the best teams face off in the quarterfinals. And then same concept will be for the for the semifinal, sorry. So Croatia ended up as a runner-up, basically second place, after losing the final to France. France won the World Cup. They were undefeated last World Cup, which was 4 years ago. It's hard thinking about it, not saying last year. But yeah, that's how the rounds and the stages work. And with all the points, that's kind of how it's explained. And then personally, it affects me where I am from, as my family's from Mexico. And it's a big thing. We usually always make it we usually make it to the World Cup, the Mexico national team. But they haven't won in a while, so I think we just kind of gave up on that concept of thinking, oh, they're gonna win this year, or yeah, we have faith in them, but at the end of the day, there is better teams out there. So if we're trying to be realistic and just not to get our hopes up, basically. And then so yeah, for my family, it's pretty big, and we do like cookouts, and we'll have the family get together and watch the TV. We'll have the game on, drinks, food. It's super fun. Um, to me personally, I love watching my favorite players. So I will miss a game even if I don't want that team to win the final. I'll still watch it just because for the next team, I'll kind of like keep score, keep track on who's gonna play with who, and um, who's gonna be knocked out, and kind of my predictions from there and how they're playing. And sometimes I'll have like two games on at the same time, so I'll just jump back and forth just to check on the score. Um, but I think it affects the world. It's a pretty big impact because since it is every 4 years, I think it builds up the hype when it comes around. Kind of like Christmas, it's every year. So I mean, when it comes around, you guys are super excited, but it is coming next year. So but this is just every 4 years, so that's pretty exciting. And then kind of like how in the U.S., United States of America, um, we have the Super Bowl, and that is pretty. It's pretty often, probably I think every year. I'm not sure. I didn't do some research on that, but it's like more often than the World Cup, and same goes for like the NBA, which March Madness. It's a pretty big deal. People get excited about those type of things. They're big events. A lot of money goes into it. People around the world watch. But I think the World Cup is something really special just because it is 4 years in between World Cups. So last one was 2018. This one's 2022, and they're hosted in different like parts of the world just because it is international. So last year, or not last year, last World Cup, it was held in Russia. This one is in Qatar, and with how these people decide to where it's gonna be, it's these countries putting up bids for it, and like, oh, we have this, we have that, we have this. So I think the next one will probably be USA and Canada, which I am pretty excited about because by the time I'll be old enough, and I'll most likely be going to that one for sure. Hopefully I get to go to the one in Qatar. I doubt it though, just because of money, and yeah, that's a lot of money. But in conclusion, as far as sports go, we have LeBron James, Duncan, and the NBA, and then with the World Series hitting balls out of the park and stuff. I think the World Cup holds a special spot for the most watched sports internationally across the globe. So, um, November 20th, 2022, mark your calendars because we will all experience that first game of the World Cup. And I think some people think soccer is an easy sport, but when it comes to not being able to use your hands, it's not that simple. Besides these talents that these soccer players already have, because growing up as kids, they pick these things up, and the amount of hard work and dedication that they put into it, this passionate sport of soccer, it's crazy. Like they literally surround their life about like their whole life just on this sport. I think it's surely one of those sports where you have to be there to like watch these players and all these like cool things they do with the ball. Like if people, if cameras and TV going live wasn't invented, you just had to be there to watch the games. Because if these things weren't recorded, you probably wouldn't believe the things that these players do. So all these games are full of surprises, and sometimes we think that these players aren't from planet Earth because it's that crazy. So if you guys watch the World Cup this year, keep an eye out on the fans and their reactions and all type of emotions. And yeah, thank you.